And crime statistic update.
We can make it.
A short briefing, hopefully on COVID-19 impacts to city operations, and then a closed session. So with that, I'd like to call the roll of who is attending the meeting here. And crime statistic update.
We can make it.
A short briefing, hopefully on COVID-19 impacts to city operations, and then a closed session. In our loop again. So with that, I'd like to call the roll of who is attending the meeting. That's not what I meant. Yeah.
Should be good.
Should be good. Okay. I'm going to call the roll of who is present here in the meeting. Physically present here at City Hall. I'm physically present. Mayor Pro Tem Britt Moore is here. Councilman Chris Williams, Councilman Wesley Hudson, Councilman Vic are all here physically present at City Hall. Councilman Michael Holmes, are you with us remotely?
I am.
Councilman Tyrone Johnson, are you with us? Hear him. Councilwoman Monica Peters, are you with us? Councilman Cyril Jefferson, are you with us?
Yes, Mayor, I am here.
Okay, so I have Councilman Holmes and Jefferson attending the meeting remotely. If Councilman Johnson or Councilwoman Peters join us, we'll let you know. First on the agenda is a briefing by our interim police chief, Travis Stroud, on end of year crime statistics. So with that, I'll turn the meeting over to Chief Stroud.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. Let me get the presentation up. All right. I tried to keep this presentation, somewhat brief. I'll go over some pretty impactful stats first, but I do want you to know that we have an end of the year statistical report that'll be produced next week that is much more comprehensive. We'll make sure we get it to every member of City Council. It'll be put out publicly through our website and through all of our channels. And like I said, it's a pretty comprehensive report that we put together every single year. But what I've done through this presentation is pulled out some of the highlights to hit some of the, like I said, the impactful things for our city. So if you're looking at 2020, anytime there we go. All right. Anytime you say the 2020, everybody gets the same thing. It was a tough year. I called it the year of hurdles in this. For everything that was thrown at us as a city and as a nation, you're looking at it. We got our city manager issues that come in there. COVID-19, we're all wearing masks in here today. I never thought we'd be doing this time last year. As things keep popping up, our chief of police retires mid-year. In the process, shortly after that, we get 2 assistant chiefs that retire shortly after. So 3 out of the 4 members of an executive staff are gone within a matter of 4 to 5 months. So that's pretty impactful for a department that's our size. Now, also with this, we have several things that are happening throughout the year. We got a pretty contentious election that's going on. I don't think I need to tell anybody about that, but that does have impact across our city and across our nation. And then lastly, across the nation, you're looking, if you're even remotely paying attention to the news, we've had some pretty massive increases in homicide rates throughout the city. So what does that mean for us as a police department? Yes, a year of hurdles, but if you're looking at us, if you're looking at that blue line and just your money that we're in there, you saw this as an investor, and I'm not a huge money man. I'm going to go back here for just a second. You're looking at that blue line, you're looking to invest. While there's a lot of variables that are not included in that graph, how long, what time frame are we talking about? How much money are we talking about? What's the return at it? You would at least be interested in that. You're looking to invest your money in some kind of stock. Well, if you take that line and you convert it to the next slide, what you're going to see, you look at the red line, that is exactly like our violent crime rate index that's going across the city. So while I know that chart is hard to read, so numbers at the bottom are going to be a little bit blurry, I'll explain what it says. That's going to graph our city, our impact crimes from pretty much 1992 until now, 2020. The line at the top is the most important one that we really look at. That's our violent crime inside the city. So you can see in the early years, 92, 93, I was hired in 95. We're close to the peak then too. We were pretty high up there in a violent crime for a city. As you can see through various initiatives and just good hard work throughout our city, which is a comprehensive effort of everybody, we've watched that violent crime rate decline through the years. So what does that mean for us in 2020? Looking at these final stats, I'll get the final numbers in as we get this report for next week, but I think we're looking at our third safest year in the past since 1992. I'm going to repeat that. That's our third safest year since 1992. And that's everything that we have going on those first couple of slides. As tumultuous as 2020 was, this is what we produced as a police department and as a city. That's pretty darn good. I'm pretty happy with that rate right there. But I'll go through some of the specifics there as we get further in the PowerPoint here. So get to the next slide. Our impact crime numbers. When you look at this chart, it screams at you and you're just like, whoa, that's a lot of numbers sitting there. I look at this every single Monday. I wait for this report to come out Monday morning for our two crime statisticians. I want to see this thing. So to breeze through some of the things, you don't have to worry about all those numbers. Look at the last three columns over there is what we really concentrate on every single day. What you have is your year-to-date 2020, which will be the end of the year, December 31. These are final stats. Year-to-date 2019, we always look at the year before to see how we compare. And then our percentage change. So the most impactful line down there is that percentage change. As you can see, we're in the red on every single one of them. Now, in the red for us is good. That's great. We're looking at a negative. We're looking at a reduction in every single impact crime throughout our city other than shoplifting. And while I don't love that shoplifting's up 3%, there's a couple of key places in town that really drive that through the roof, and that's just the way it is. We have to deal with that part. But from an impact side, we're looking at a lot of those persons crimes impacts that were driven down throughout the year. Our homicide rate went from 19 to 14. We reduced it by 26%. That's pretty darn good considering a lot of neighboring agencies were getting hammered with homicides this year. Now, that's not meant to throw them under the bus or anything like that. I know those agencies are working hard. They're friends to us. That could have easily been us on the other side of this, but it wasn't. And we're rolling with these stats. So I'm pretty happy with that negative that comes in there on every single one of them. So that tells me several things. Number one, your officers are working hard. They are. They're out there getting it done, despite all the hurdles that I laid out before. Our city has been very supportive of us. This confirms what I say. The majority of our city, 115,000 plus people, they're awesome. They're great citizens. They're law abiding, and we don't have issues out of them at all. But we are going to have issues. Criminals are going to be criminals. That's what they do. And it's our job to arrest them if that's what it comes down to, or get them to stop that activity. So on the next slide, what you'll look at, it should be a crime clock. This is what we look at. What that reads is 2020 HPBD crime clock. So at the bottom, it says 1 every. Take that 1 every, and you can put it in front of every one of those blue spots on the screen. So we have one robbery every 3 days, 1 murder every 24.3 days. You get the picture. I don't need to read all of them to you. But you can see, as great as our stats are for 2020, and I'm very happy with them, that's clearly, when you put it in that kind of context, it's way too high for us. I'm not satisfied with those numbers. A homicide every 24.3 days. Are you kidding me? Our number's this. My response to every single time people ask us about the number of homicides, and we're glad we reduced it, it's still 14 too many. 14 too many inside our city. We want 0 every single year. But I would love to see that crime rate drop quite a bit more. But you look, there's some impactful stuff in there. Our calls for service, 4 minutes. That's pretty good service time inside a city our size for the number of officers that we're putting on the street. So we're trying to get out there and answer a lot of these calls. But you can see, as we'll go through, I'll hit some of the highlights in just a minute, but some of those are still too high for us. As happy as I am, they're still too high. So on our next slide, to get you our calls for service, our city is broken down into 6 beats. And if you'll look at your map, if you can work it from the bottom, the yellow will be beat 1, move up and to the right, beat 2. Beat 2 will be to give you a geographic location. That's where the police department's located right now. To the left of that, in the blue, will be beat 3. Back over to the right in green is 4. The orange, pink is 5, and then the blue upper section is 6. So you can see our calls are pretty much even. I got it in front of me. Our calls are pretty much even throughout each beat. We're talking about 18,000 in beat 1, 18,000 in beat 2, 18,000 in beat 3, 15 in beat 4, 18 in beat 5, and 14 in beat 6. So we're pretty heavy in every single one of these beats. We're running. We have our city broken down geographically correct. We need that to staff it correctly. And we adjusted our beats maybe 2 years ago in 2018 to help reflect this and get us better service in there. But in total, for the year, we answered 107,555 calls for service. 107,555 calls for service. So to break that down, that's at 295 calls per day that are coming into Little Old High Point to have answered for police service. Now, granted, some days are going to be light. We may not get anywhere near 295 calls, but there's going to be some days we're well over 400 coming in to us. Either way, we got to answer them. But it breaks down to about 295 calls per day. That's pretty big. That's a lot. And we're running to try to get there. That's why it screams even more important that we're hitting on a 4-minute response time to get out there. So our call source, the next one should be a little pie chart in there. And I bring this down to how we're getting our calls in for police service. Forget the one at the bottom where it says radio 0%. That'll be removed on the year-end report. But this is how we're getting. We get 20% calling into 911 from an emergency mode. Okay, this is something they deem we need help right now. They have a non-emergency lineup for communications. We get 34% of our calls there. But the one I really wanted to highlight in this graph was the self-initiated calls. 44% are coming from our officers. Why is that impactful? That tells me that your officers and our officers are going out there and they are doing their job. They are trying to combat crime. They are trying to do the job that they were hired to do. We have sworn that we will not just be a call answering service. We can't do it. That is not, I don't think we're going to combat crime like that and really make any headway to keep driving numbers down and impact crime. I think your officers have to go out there and look for those activities that are impactful for our city and then enforce the law properly when we do it. So the 44% is big to me. I was very happy when I saw that number. So that tells me our folks are out there getting it done in the street, but they're doing it on their own time when we have what we call unaccounted for time. When we're not physically answering a call, they're out there doing self-initiated activity. That's the sign of some motivated officers right there. So on the next side, all these calls that we get in, the 107,555, we can either answer them on the scene and solve them right there, potentially. But if it's not, if it's a report-taking thing, we'll take those reports in the street, and those reports get pushed to 2 different divisions. One will be our property crimes division, and then our violent crimes division or persons crimes division. So when you're looking at this, this is how this next chart or 2 charts are how our case assignments goes. When we take reports out in the street, when those reports come back to the PD, they get reviewed, make sure everything's correct statistically so we can enter them into the system. It'll be assigned to a detective. So on the left side of your screen, assigned cases to property crimes, they got a total of 1,973 cases assigned to them. Now, to give you a number of detectives back there, that's roughly 11 in that division. 11 property crimes detectives. So the impactful number, though, is the one at the bottom. So every one of those detectives, 179 cases per detective. That's what they're holding on to. So it gets to them. They have to investigate it, follow up on it, and try to clear it. So as you can tell, they got a pretty heavy caseload in front of them. And not every case is easily cleared. The information we get just doesn't lead us to have probable cause on someone to make an arrest, and we have to inactivate those cases and various things. That's a lot of cases to sit on your desk because they don't really go anywhere. Even though we may inactivate them and stuff like that, they're still there. And if we get information that pops up that can help us investigate it, we'll open a case back up. But that's a ton of cases for one person to sit on. On the right side are violent crimes, special victims units. These are any crimes that involve a person being the victim, meaning you are the physical person being the victim. So we had 925 of those come back to detectives in the past year. And our violent crimes detectives are sitting on 77 cases per person. And we're talking about roughly 10 people. Roughly 10 people between our special victims unit that works at the Family Justice Center and the violent crimes folks who are over at the PD with us. So 10 people, 77 cases per detective. Now, we may farm a couple of cases out to our strategic intel or maybe vice narcotics, depending on what it has attached to it. But that's a pretty heavy caseload. I put that in there for a reason. Because I know you guys, as city councilor, constituents are going to call you. I know the city manager, he's going to get calls for we'll have cases go up and people wonder why, hey, why is nothing being done on my case? This may give a little better explanation of why things may not happen in a timely fashion. We got cases that are sitting there on people's desks and we just maybe not be able to get to them. We're going to take the ones that we can get, the most impactful ones, and the ones that we can solve the fastest. That's the ones we're going to get out of the way first. But that's a lot on any individual right there. 179 for our property crimes and 77 for our violent crimes folks. Big question is, why are our numbers lower? We use, and there's probably a ton of factors in there, but this is my opinion as the interim chief of police. We have a very simple but focused approach that I think works. We specifically want to concentrate our efforts on those violent crimes inside the city. They're the ones that impact us, and they drive the livability and the prosperity of our city into the ground if we don't address them properly in a timely fashion. So our philosophy is simply this. We concentrate on three things: people, cars, and guns. That's it when it comes to the violent crime effort. This is a holistic effort, but really when it comes down to these three things is what it rolls down to. I put in there the people. Like I just told you a minute ago, we got 115,000 people in the city. Majority are awesome. They don't violate the law at all. But we do have a handful, and we're talking about some very low numbers. I think it's below 200 people, if I were just giving a number today, that are truly impact players in our city. They drive our crime all day long. We got to concentrate on them. That's where you put your efforts at. Concentrate on those folks. Cars. Reasonable suspicion and probable cause. That's your two reasons to stop a car. That's it. Got to have one of those two. There's no other reason behind there. And we're going to operate in that standard, but I'll hit these a little further in the slides going forward. And the last thing is guns. I always put in there in parentheses. I make sure I address this. We are not worried about the legal guns. And what makes a gun legal or illegal, I'll hit in just a minute, because it's not necessarily the gun that's legal or illegal, it's the person. So people, cars, and guns, that's our philosophy. We run on it pretty hard. Here in the last year, especially the last half of the year, we pushed it across the agency. And I'll tell you, I think our numbers, that's why your numbers are lower. It's as simple as that. This focused approach helps. On the next slide, people. Focus on the impact players. These are your trigger pullers, the ones who are pushing other people to involve in criminal activity. Their names are very, very consistent to us. We see them every single day. When we do reports, whatever it may be, actual reports or field sheets, we scour through these things. It's not like we write it down, submit it, and let it go. These things are examined on many different levels every single day, all day long. And we see the same names coming up every single time. That's how we figure out who the people are. So if you look throughout the year, and this is just a total effort here, for our 2020 arrests and charges, we made 7,085 arrests. Now, granted, that is down from 2019. You know, the less we can arrest, that's better too. I like that. But you got to arrest the right people. That's the key to the puzzle. Total charges, 11,209. And then the last part, so I explain this, the people. The number of arrests is how many people we charged in there. The people is who we physically put handcuffs on, put them in the back of the police car, took them in front of the magistrate. Every time we issue a citation for this or that, that is considered to be an arrest in that first stat. So we may issue a citation, let them go. They'll show up in court on whatever day that is. That is not a physical arrest for us. So the 4,758 are the times we put handcuffs on people and took them in front of the magistrate's office. Does that make sense? You have to explain that away because it can be very confusing when you're looking at that stat. I also thought it was impactful. I wanted to make sure I put it up here. Our age range of what we're dealing with in the street and who we are arresting. So you can see there's different ranges over there, 19 and under, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49. As you can tell, the 20 to 39 numbers are what drive us the most. Okay. But the most concerning part of that is that 19 and under number, while it may seem low at 10%, a lot of the ones that are 19 and under are impact players right now. That they are driving a lot of our crime. You know, we had the raise the age law kick into effect where 18 and older becomes an adult, 18 below 18 is a juvenile. And that has played a role in it too, because a lot of our offenders we're seeing on the street are younger, much younger. And they're doing those impact crimes, a lot of shootings, drive-bys, stuff like that. So that has thrown it for a loop. So I don't want that 19 and under number to throw you off. It says 10% and it's not a big deal. No, it is. That 10% who may be driving the crime is probably a lot of why the big time numbers are up on the first page.
Chief Stroud, quick question. This is Councilman Jones. On the 4758 where it says people, is that different people or some of that people? Is it some of that there have been arrests more than once in this given year?
It'll be more than once. Yeah, it would be 4,758 people. I guarantee that a lot of offenders that we see have been arrested quite a bit. And actually, I'm going to pull out a stat here to show that in just a second when we get a little further in on some of this stuff, because it's when I get to the guns part and you'll see your eyes should go, oh my goodness. So again, looking at the ages, I mean, that we got a wide range in there, but you can guess if I were pull a quiz on you before, you could have guessed that middle range of ages are the ones who are committing crimes. You get older, you just move out of the game. They don't do those things. So on our next part, I hit the cars. Remember, it's people, cars, and guns, 3 pieces. The cars, I put it up there, our poor driving and violent activity. I know several of you have heard me speak before. I don't think our driving inside the city is good at all. I'll be very light about it today and nice when use not some colorful wording. The driving's not good, just on any level. I think we have traffic issues. I'm not sure if we have much more aggressive driving, distracted driving, high speeds, all kinds of motor vehicle violations going on out there. It's just not something that's acceptable to me. It's a safety factor inside our city. But we have made a pledge inside the city. We will continue to stop cars based on what 2 things? Reasonable suspicion and probable cause. So over the course of the last year, we stopped 18,166 cars inside the city. That's pretty good. I like that number. We want to stop cars. We've sworn to do it, and we're going to keep doing it. I think it helps control crime inside our city. We issued 11,919 citations and 3,198 warning tickets. Now, our officers have been given their adults. I expect them to operate within the parameters that I give them, and I'll let them have the discretion on what they want to charge on a citation or give a warning ticket. So that is really up to the moment. They'll make the decision at that time if they're going to do a citation or a warning ticket. Impactful things, our crashes throughout the year, motor vehicle crashes, 4,081. We're down 15% from last year, but that's not really the impactful stat that we're looking at. If you look to the right of that, 13 fatal crashes, 14 fatalities. So 13 crashes where people died. We had 14 people die. One had 2 in there. That is way too much for us. Absolutely not. Our number of homicides for the year was 14. We had 14 crashes where people are getting killed too. This was one of the reasons we put forth the traffic surge at the end of last year. We looked at the data. We are data driven. We do this every single day. So we said, what can we do? This is unacceptable. Number one, the driving's poor. And then you got on top of it, crashes that are costing people's lives. So we put forth the traffic surge, and I didn't bring those numbers in with me today. That's not really what I'm trying to concentrate on. Largely, I don't know how you measure success or failure. I know we haven't had a traffic fatality since then.
That's correct.
I do know that. But again, has it slowed people down? I still don't think the driving's that great. So be ready. The traffic surge will be back in 2021. And we'll do the same thing that we did before. We'll announce it ahead of time. We'll tell you exactly what we're going to do. We'll give you a heads up. Hopefully you slow down, obey the rules of the road, and get your car fixed and up to date, and you'll be good to go. The bottom graph down there, a lot of the questions that we get, once we tell traffic stops, people always ask me, hey, what's your demographics on the traffic stop? And I think that's an important factor. Our crime analysts have broken it down in there. It gives you in the comprehensive report, it's broken down much better so you can read it. But that's a quick little breakdown of who we stop and what their race is. And it's pretty even across the board. As you can see, a majority of them, black and white, 44% each. We also put in passengers in there as well. We have a lot of contacts with passengers, and they're substantial for a portion of the crime that we deal with. So we're pretty much even across the board as far as those numbers go. So that's the cars portion of it. You know, I make sure I hit this on every single time. I didn't put a stat in with it. But when you're talking about impact crimes, the violent stuff in throughout your city, this is why I want our people to stop cars. Bad guys drive from A to B. They don't take the bus. They're not using ride shares, and they're not walking. They are going from A to B. That is why we need to use the motor vehicle laws and everything that's in front of us, real suspicion and probable cause, to stop cars every chance we get. I want people to know, if you're a criminal coming in our city to commit violent acts, you should know when you cross over the border into our city, you know what? Those High Point guys and girls may stop me. Maybe I'll go somewhere else. Or maybe I just won't do it at all, which would be great. I don't want you to go anywhere and commit violent crime, but especially not in our city. But I do want criminals to know, you cross over the border in our city, the chances of you getting stopped are good, because we're going to stop cars. We're going to continue to do that. Why do we stop cars? This was in the news yesterday. 4 charged with murder after body found in trunk. Okay. And again, this is somewhere else. Thank goodness it's somewhere else. Halifax County Sheriff's Office. You know why they stopped the car? Speeding. This is why you stop cars. You find crime when you do it. It keeps criminals off guard. They got to have their head on a swivel watching for us all times. So this is one of the bigger reasons, but I tell them, bad guys are moving from A to B. Let's let them do it freely. Just don't let them do it freely. Now, so long as they obey the law, everything's up to date on their car, We don't have reasonable suspicion or probable cause, they'll be able to move freely because we're going to abide by the law. Another question that I get when I talk about traffic stops is I always get, well, where are y'all making these stops inside the city? You remember 18,000 plus inside the city. So that's a Mapify point. You probably can't tell it because all the green dots, because that's 18,166 traffic stops. But that's where we're stopping cars. We're stopping cars all over the place in this city. I'm very happy with that. I'm glad it's not clustered into one spot. Granted, Center City is going to be, that's where our major arteries are and stuff like that. But even on the north side, we're up there trying to get the work done in every single beat. Guns, guns, guns. This is the last part. This is a very impactful one. And I always put in there, I told you I'd explain this. We want the illegal guns all day long. We're coming after them. Now, what makes a gun illegal? A gun itself is not illegal. But if it is used in the commission of an offense or it's in the possession of an individual who's prohibited from having that weapon because he's committed an offense in the past, then we want it. We're coming after it. We're going to try and take it all day long. This is one of our biggest missions. So in 2020, we seized 433 guns, confiscated evidence or found them. That's how many we took off the street for the year. That is up from the year before. Again, this was a focus for us. So I think we were just sub 400 last year, and we're 433 this year. And I'd imagine we'll be hot on it this year because it's still going to be a focus for us. Now, here's some of the things that are really impactful to you. 2,704 shell casings were found. That means bullet gets fired out in the street, round goes down range, shell casing falls on the ground. We picked up 2,704 out of our streets. While the numbers may be lower, that tells me right there we still got plenty of violent activity going on that we got to address. We located 92 guns on traffic stops. Again, this is why we stop cars. 188 persons charged with 300 gun charges. So with that, those 188, they stacked up 300 because there may be multiple offenses that go with each case. Now, the impactful stat that I wanted to pull out on that, this is one that really, when I saw it, we have another report on just gun crime that I've been looking at since January the 6th. And I scour through that, Dan, because again, it's important for us. But out of those 188 persons that are charged with gun crimes throughout 2020, throughout their lifetime, we look at their demographics from A to B, they have accumulated 3,593 total charges. 188 people. That's a lot. I mean, I don't know what that is per person, 20 something a person. So that tells me you got to go after the right people, and we are going after the right people. We arrested 188 people who were responsible for 3,593 charges throughout their life. That tells me they're also, once you're in the game, it's very, very hard to get out sometimes. You've got to get yourself out of that cycle. We answered 1,291 shots fired calls inside the city. Some of those we were able to follow up on. Some of them we just had shots fired and calls, couldn't do anything with it. 11 of our 14 criminal homicides involved a gun. Again, this is the reason we're focusing on guns. That's impactful for us. It's a big percentage of our most impactful crime, and we want to make sure we take those guns off the street. At the bottom, I wanted to make sure I put this in there again. Out of our 188 that we charged, looking at the age ranges in there, 13 to 17, we took 23 guns off those folks. 23 guns off of basically kids, if that's what you want to call them. By the law, that's what they're called, but they're not acting like kids out in the street. They're doing adult impact crimes. But then as you can expect, 18 to 25 and 26 to 35 are our biggest ranges in there, taking 69 guns off and 70, almost the same. So, but the main thing is that 13 to 17 range, that's too much. You're getting in, those are people who are setting themselves up to be involved in this for a lifetime. That is not what we want. We want to deviate those people from the system as quickly as possible. And we have some new initiatives that we're kicking out in 2021 to help us hit that head on, get those kids out of the game. So I told you I wouldn't slam you with the stats. You can look at the year-end report when it comes out next week. I'll make sure I get it to you. But for us as a police department, how we operate from this point forward. Again, I told you all the changes in the hurdle slide. Big changes for our police department, and we sort of seized the moment. That model that you're looking at is everything that we're going to work off of as a police department from this point forward. We're in short rebranding. We are. The only thing that's not changed is this iconic patch that's going to be on our shoulder. It should last forever because it's awesome. But we're coming up with a new strategic plan. We have a new mission statement, which I'll give to you in just a minute. It's going to help match that mission statement behind you on the wall. But we also want to model on what we can build with for our strategic plan. So everything we do should trace back to this. If you look at the model, the base is going to be leadership and employee development. Should encompass every single one of the members of our police department, sworn in, non-sworn. You see, I'm wearing my gator on the 307 on the side. It's written on there. I get questions about it. That's how many employees we have at the police department. 262 sworn officers and 45 civilians, all of which play a crucial role in our success. So we brand ourselves as the 307. And if we get an extra body and we go to 308, then we'll be the 308. But right now we're going to sit on 307. I got it for a while. But everything is based on leadership and employee development. I tell all of our folks, if we're weak in a division, even inside our city, if we're weak somewhere, look at the leadership first. It'll trace back to that. I almost guarantee it will. But we have 4 pillars that we're going to work on. Number 1, we're going to be crime fighters. We swore to do this, put my hand on the Bible 26 years ago and said, I'm going to fight some crime. And we're going to do it inside our city. I think our numbers show it. I think everybody else is taking that same pledge. So we're a crime fighting agency, number 1. That is what you hired us to do. It really is. When it comes down to it, we arrest people and keep people safe. But with that, we also want to engage with our community. That has been a huge piece of the puzzle for the High Point Police Department for a long time, but now we are going to make it a focused effort where we push it into 2021. We had a phenomenal year engaging with the community in 2020. Even with a pandemic, we set unprecedented levels. I can only imagine once we get clear of this stuff, what we're going to do. But in there, we're going to make sure we train. You've got to train as a police officer. This is where COVID has hurt us a little bit. For us, you got to be in person. It's got to be hands-on. It's got to be scenario-driven, reality-based for us. And COVID has thrown us for a loop a little bit. So we're having to scramble a little bit on training, but it is going to be a pillar that we're going to build on. Then lastly is our policy. This is what makes us professional. When policy is based on the law, best practice, common sense, all those things are in there. And that's why we have policies that we're going to help drive us. So those are our 4 pillars. And then ultimately they hold up the High Point Police Department, the 307. So anything that we do should trace back to one of those pieces of the puzzle from this point forward. And it doesn't matter who the chief of police is. I know I'm serving in an interim fashion. We get another full-time chief of police. This model works because it's right. Now, if there's another pillar we need to add to it, then we'll add to it. But I'm telling you, everything we do should trace back to one of these spots. All right, as I finish up, I told you we changed our mission statement. Our mission statement before was awesome. It really was. It was good. But we didn't do a great enough job through the years of giving it to generation. When I say we, that includes me. I've been here 26 years. I could have easily taken the reins on the mission statement and pushed it across, and I failed to do that. But we thought now, with all our changes, was the time to really get back to something close to what we have here. So we changed our mission to make High Point a safe city by developing leaders and employees in crime fighting, community engagement, training, and professional policing. Those 4 pillars in that base you just looked at, that's our mission. But we wanted to match your statement. We think our job is the safe. Those words that you got behind you, creating the single most livable, safe, and prosperous community in America, we pledged our job safe. I think that's going to help the livability and prosperous part of it. But our job is to keep you safe. And I think we did that in 2020. Again, would I love for those numbers to be lower? Absolutely. Do I think we can do more? Absolutely. And I think we're out of the woods? No, I do not, because I have concerns moving forward in 2020. This is the last slide, and I'll shut up and you can ask some questions. Moving forward, a couple of concerns that I have. Number 1 for me is the retention of our current officers. I told you we're staffed for 262. That's how many sworn positions we have. We're not staffed at 262. We're 24 officers down right now. That means vacant positions that we can't put bodies in, not hurt or anything like that. There's a whole other crew who's hurt, out for COVID right now, whatever else. So we're 24 bodies down. That's pretty impactful for a force our size. That hurts you. Now, are we trying to fill them? Absolutely. But the main thing is with retention, I want to keep the officers that we have in place. We vetted them. They went through our hiring process, which is pretty darn rigorous. So for you to get hired with us, I'm not going to pat ourselves on the back or anything, but it is hard. We turn a lot of people away. So we're only going to accept the best. So we've already vetted them. We've trained them. We've invested in them. We know what kind of work they can produce. They just showed it in all the stats. I don't want those people to leave, but they can tomorrow. Every agency is fighting for the qualified to do this job. And I'm telling you, all of our sworn folks could leave tomorrow and get another job if they wanted. We got to make it where they want to stay here in High Point. And that's my job as your interim chief of police. It's our job as a city to do that. And I think we do a pretty good job of it, but I'm not going to lose sight of that. We got to retain. So filling those vacancies is a big key for us. Like I said, we're rebanding. We got all kinds of plans on where to go, but we're working on our sales pitch right now. If I'm going to go recruit you, Brett, I'm going to come after you. I'm not sure what I would have said 5 months ago to recruit you. Now we got to put a much better plan with that new strategic plan, that model, something we can build on. So we're working on the vacancies. We're never going to stop, but we got to make our sales pitch better than the other 18,000 that are pitching to the small groups. That's the hard part. So we're working on those things. I do think we cannot ignore the social and racial issues that are out there. They were all over the place, been there for years. They really came to the forefront in 2020. They're not going away. We got to address those things head on. It's my job. We only worry about what we can control. It's one of our sayings at the PD. We control that police department. We got to make sure those things do not interfere with the job we do in the street. So that's what we're doing internally right now. And that's going to take a whole community to address those things. And the police department is just a small part of the puzzle, but we're not going to ignore it. And then lastly, I'll put it in there in 4. Like our numbers are down. Man, I'm not okay with that. I want those numbers to be much lower in 2021. We're never going to be satisfied. It's almost like playing a game, your football game on Sunday, and you win, but you know you could have played better. That's what we're doing in 2021. How can we be better for this? How can we drive those stats down? So yes, several concerns that I have, especially on our numbers, because the phenomenon in policing is this right now. They're not banging down the door to do this job. They aren't. So we got to go find those qualified people and get them to work here. It's getting harder. This is, I don't want to say it's a dying profession, but it is getting harder to get people in the door to want to do this job at the level that our community expects. And it's going to be a concern for us as a police department. It should be a concern for you as we move forward, because if you don't have people to come do this job, the rest of it doesn't matter. You got to have people who are willing to do it. But we're not there yet, and we're working on it. We're trying to put a plan in place. I don't want to pull the ripcord yet or anything. We're okay. We'll keep plugging away, but it is a concern for the future. So, questions?
I got a couple, Chiefs. First, I want to thank you for this information. It's kind of what we've been sharing with citizens all last year when we were looking at neighbors going through what was happening, especially in the homicide area. So I really am grateful. And I think if people can see those numbers, they can appreciate the efforts you're making in the city. Just 2 questions. Both of them are pretty much around the same subject. One thing that we have seen, and I got my information from I guess the people who work within Lord have mercy, hang on a second. It's the families that's working dealing with domestic violence issues, and the increased numbers that I've heard from them, from those multiple different agencies, were like pretty daggone astronomical since the COVID, since the pandemic started. I wanted to know when it comes to within High Point, what kind of increase we looked at. And also, you said 14 homicides, and I'm assuming that those are obviously integrated into those homicides, the domestic violent homicides we've had.
That's correct.
How many of those were domestic violence?
And please, Chris, don't hold me to the exact numbers now. I would rely on our FJC folks to really get a good gauge on, and I think it might even be in that year-end report that comes out next week. You know, I think our DV numbers, as far as call answering, yes, I bet they're up. Maybe. I don't know. I really can't answer to a true number, but I'll be able to look at that report. We're reviewing it right now to make sure everything is correct. But with a pandemic, I mean, I bet they're up, but I bet they're also close to where they were. We really did not see much of a deviation or drop in crime with the pandemic. So I can't imagine we had a drop in DV, and I can only imagine just by the dynamics of what we're dealing with, being cooped up and things like that, those numbers go up. As far as the homicide number goes, just off the top of my head, I think we had at least 3 last year, at least 3 that we could trace back to strictly DV stuff. And I could be wrong, could be more. But I'll know when it comes out next week. I think DV is specifically addressed in there. I just didn't pull it out for this presentation.
Well, I didn't expect that you probably could call that up. I was just curious about what that looked like.
Well, DV for us is a big deal. I mean, you know, we have our initiative that's been very successful and has been replicated across the country, and we have seen successes with it. But DV is one of those things that's hard to stay on top of. It is. I mean, it's one of those hidden, it's behind a closed doors deal. So you got to work to get out there. But I'm telling you, those offenders show their hand before. They do. They've offended before. They've done this. We just got to get in and dig down to the roots of those reports and figure out who they are. And then when they do it the first time, jump all over it. Tell them this ain't going to happen here.
And you're referring to your own DV program?
Yes, sir.
Separate from FJC?
Yes, sir.
program.
We have our own DV initiative, but FJC is a hand-in-hand partner with us on that. Yes, it was our initiative. It was there long before FJC, but they have proved to be a crucial partner in this deal because they provide services that we cannot.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Chief, I got a few questions. This is the mayor. Where are we in terms of drug crimes and sort of the heroin addiction and overdose issues that they were maybe a little more prominent a few years ago? But, where are we in terms of that?
And I actually took that graph out of the slide because I didn't think you'd really be into it, but we are.
I get a lot of questions.
We are replicated on heroin overdoses for the year. We replicated the year before. I think we're one more. I think it was 264 for 2019, 265 for 2020. Now, as far as deaths go, I think we were down quite a bit. I think we had 26 deaths in 2019 and we had 10 last year. So clearly that's a big time drop in heroin OD deaths, but still 10 is too many. But I do attribute that to a lot of factors. We have much more Narcan out there on the street now between us, the fire department, EMS, and citizens. Now, alarming part with that is a lot of those probably overdoses that are reversed by citizen Narcan, we may never know about those. They don't call the police. But as far as the numbers go, we were about even on heroin. I should have left that graph in there. But as far as an overall drug number goes, take out heroin, just take drugs altogether, I think it remains pretty much steady. I think drugs are a driving force in everything that goes around criminal activity in some way, shape, or form. If you could look at that and it spawns off, I bet it's got a drug nexus somewhere, somehow, some way on the impact violent crime stuff. I do. I believe that. And that's one of those fallacies you hear about, the legalization of this and the decriminalization of that. I'm like, be careful, buddy. That's a road you do not want to go down because there's already crime involved with it. Doesn't mean that crime's going away. It doesn't just because you legalize it. It's all the residual stuff that goes with it. So I do think, drugs are still a prominent number that we deal with. That's why we have a vice narcotics unit that we're not disbanding. I could easily use those officers elsewhere, but absolutely not. We need them on the street going after drug dealers.
My second question relates to your cars section
Yes,
of
sir.
your strategy. I've read a fair amount about there's a lot of stolen cars are taken somewhere else and used in a crime,
Yes.
ditched somewhere, or often you read that a lot of these shootings they're using a stolen car. There's a company here in High Point that makes these card readers that you can put on your vehicle, police vehicles, and will instantly tell you if the car you drove by is stolen or whatever.
Yes.
Is that a technology that you're interested in, or do you think that could help us to?
Yes, it's an LPR, a license plate reader is what it is. It is technology, and we already employ it inside the city. We have it deployed through officers' cars and some stationary units throughout the city. I'll avoid telling you where, because people are trying to avoid them then. But yes, we do use the technology already, and I'm telling you, it's beneficial. When we have impactful crimes, we'll get the mobile LPR to get out and start reading things, and the data we'll generate from it is great for us. That's impactful. That's how we can combat crime. And the stationary location that we run, it tells us quite a bit. We see cars coming in the city that are stolen. It allows us to get an immediate response before they go do more crime inside our city. So it gives us a heads up on it. Granted, it is expensive. It's got attached to your car in there. I mean, if you'll be able to tell the car's with it. So they got 4 little things sticking off of it. They're taking snapshots all the time and sending it through the processor, and they're getting that data back almost instantaneous.
Yeah.
But yes, we do deploy it inside the city already.
Is that something that if you were to have more of those, would you like to have more of those, or
I would.
what you're thinking about it?
I would. I mean, I would never turn technology down. I mean, that is the way of the world right now, and that couldn't help us. Again, you said it. Cars. It's the strategy. If that helps us combat, especially violent crime, by using technology, then I would definitely not turn it down. I mean, my biggest focus right now is getting those body cameras on the street, though.
Yeah.
When it comes to money, it is the Travis Stroud philosophy. Let's get those cameras out. They'll vindicate us more than hurt us every single time.
Chief, this is Councilmember Hudson. I really appreciate that social and racial issues are on your focus points. Can you give me some examples of what you're doing with that?
Well, in-house first. I told you, only worry about what you can control. I really did feel like that it was one of those touchy subjects for us that I really want to talk about. You know, it's tough. It is. I've been questioned straight up, and it's hard to put you on your heels because you're nervous when you give answers. You know, I think you speak from the heart. A lot of it comes down to character first. It really does. And this is why we go through that vetting process and try to hire the right people out of the gates. We need to be checking these things. I bet there's a red flag somewhere in there for the ones who are truly like they're racist and stuff like that. I bet there's a red flag and they've been waving it. You just got to make sure you find those things. So internally, we want to make sure from the hiring side, we are not skipping steps. Don't take chances on hiring from the beginning. Then you'll have to deal with a problem later in-house. This is just an in-house thing because I think that's where you've got to start. Now, we do have a lot of in-service training that is dedicated to a lot of social issues, whether it be from juvenile minority sensitivity training to everything that's going on now. And some of that is hit or miss, I will tell you. Some of it is just people are mass producing it. It's the hot topic. It's the buzzword. So let's get it out. We think we got to get on it. And then you watch it and you're like, that's not even close to reality, what we're dealing with out here. But the biggest part is internal side first. Then we're looking at the national stuff that's coming down. That'll be probably more of a 2021 issue for us. Really, in 2020, what we did is while a lot of our civil unrest was derived from those social and racial issues, we were having to really get on the civil unrest part. We didn't have time to look at the racial and social side. We were like, okay, we could have a riot tonight. What are we going to do? Are we going to be ready? And that's where we had to concentrate. Really, the whole last part of 2020 was getting our crew, our teams ready for potential civil unrest between, social and racial or the presidential election. We knew that was coming too. So internally, that'll be a big push for us in 2021. But it's hard because I don't know what's right and wrong. I don't. I just know where I stand as an individual and how I want our agency to stand. I do know we're not going to ignore it, though. We will take it on. We'll have conversations. People may not like my answers sometime, but I promise that I will be transparent. I'll give you the truth, at least from my perspective. Any other questions? I know I took longer than I said, Randy. I apologize. Just got talking. And again, I will make sure you get the full report next week. I mean, it's roughly 30 some odd pages. It's a lot of reading. It is. We want to make sure it's right before we stick it out. I don't want to hit go on it and it be wrong. So we'll probably do that next week.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I want to tell you before I go sit down, I appreciate you guys' support. I do. One thing that I have not had to deal with, or we have not had to deal with as a city, is a discord or headbutting between our police department and the city council or city government. Not at all. Not one time, actually. People always say these things. I'm like, that's not us. That's not what we see from our city council or the members who support us every single day. I've experienced nothing but support as long as I've been here, really, but especially since I've taken over as interim. So I appreciate that. It does not go unnoticed. I make sure I mention it to our troops every single chance I get because it is again, other places don't get this. So we feel pretty blessed on that part. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is a briefing on our COVID-19 impacts on city operations. It looks like Greg Ferguson's coming out for that.
Eric and I are going to share this. I'm going to start off with the first several slides to talk about kind of where we're at, a snapshot, kind of where we are right now, but also we've been in this for over 9 months. And so you have seen and our residents have seen some impacts. We want to talk about a few of those today and then some of the things that might happen as we move forward, as we have departments and divisions that are starting to see impacts that have not seen them before. So we're in that cycle, certainly after Christmas of more cases, whether they're secondary exposure or just testing to be safe and cautious. But we want to talk about a few of these items today that you're aware of and some may happen in the future. So in public services, we have and we may continue to have some impacts with leaf and yard waste collections, street sweeping, cemetery operations, and then the operation of Ingleside composting facility. I want to call out those areas because those are the areas where we have to bring staff from those areas and backfill the next bullet there, which is areas that we just have to operate. Our water and sewer treatment plants, our garbage collections of solid waste, and then landfill. So if there are employees being moved around in public services, the top bullets item may be impacted, but the critical ones absolutely are the bottom. In fire, we have had staffing impacts already. And really, the only way you can address that is you have to have overtime. So staff members are being brought back and or kept on the job for overtime. And so that is a budgetary impact. We track that. Eric's going to talk about that a little bit in some of the information he has for you. In our police, as the chief said, there are some opportunities for some movement internal to the police department. We don't want to have that happen, but we have COVID impacts that are happening. Overtime certainly has been used there to address some of the staffing levels. And then there's also that third bullet, the potential for future temporary reassignments to staff patrol division level. So if we get to a critical point, some of those property folks might end up pulling more time in a patrol division. We don't want to have to see that be implemented, but that is a possibility. You're aware of a couple of shutdowns that we had in the transit area. We had some service reductions where routes have not been run like they would be pre-COVID. And then also we've seen some customers who have not wanted to comply. So that's been an issue in the transit area. You're aware of some of our programs that have been impacted at the rec centers, the environmental center. Certainly our senior center has been closed for over 9 months or so. Now we've had modifications to athletics. Golf, while it's been popular, has had some modifications take place there. The Marina and Special Populations Programming. We have seen certainly increased activity and interest in our outdoor facilities, and greenways and just people getting outside has been very popular and given the public an opportunity to get some activity and recreation. You're aware our library has been impacted severely. We're phasing that opening back up. They're currently having hours that they're serving the public. We just don't have anybody sitting down, spending a long amount of time in the library. The museum also has had service impacts as well. Building permits and inspections. This is one area where you would think there would possibly be more real tangible impact than there's been. Even though there's been limited in-person office hours, pretty quickly all those permitting options went online, and overall, the majority of those transactions have gone smoothly. We still do have people walk into City Hall that maybe don't have access to the internet or they're not that familiar with how it works. So we do still see some in-person transactions, but for the most part, those have gone fairly smoothly. So from a safety standpoint, what's the current status of what we're doing and have been doing for a number of months? Social distancing and mask signage has been up for months and months at our facilities. Hand sanitizing stations, if you've seen those around the city as well. We are proactively spraying buildings. So buildings, this particular building is sprayed 1 day a week at the end of the day when everybody's out and there's a limited opportunity for conflict with other meetings. So that's taking place. If we know we have areas where employees have tested positive, or if there's a likelihood that somebody might be positive, we're doing proactive spraying and reactive spraying. Just to clarify, just because an area is sprayed doesn't necessarily mean that someone has tested positive in an area. It could be a proactive step. The next bullet there, masks have to be worn in city buildings. This complies with the governor's mandate about what we need to do if you're in close proximity or around other people. The exception to that is if you're in your personal office, you don't wear a mask if you're in your personal office. And then there's a mandate for our employees that are riding in vehicles. So if you see 2 city employees in a vehicle, they should be masked up. And so we're trying to work on that. I think Eric's gonna go ahead into the next section.
So some of this is a refresh from what we did just a few weeks ago, but we want to talk about customer service and the utility bill payments. Back in September, we created 2,455 COVID payment plans for those who were behind on their bills. Currently, over 1,400 have been paid in full, so that's good news. And of the remaining accounts, 1,100 owe less than $300. So the balances on those remaining accounts are certainly lower than they were at the beginning. And the original COVID balance was 1.4 million. So currently the balance is 316,000. over 500 customers have applied for the HOPE program funds. These aren't all people that were on the COVID payment plan, but many of them are interchanged. So those HOPE program funds, we should receive about $220,000 for those bills as well.
Have we received any at all?
Not yet, but we have commitment letters. So that's, for us, that's as good as receiving the payment. Personnel impact, we wanted to talk a little bit about what our staff members, where we are right now. As you recall, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act extended 80 hours of leave for COVID-related issues to each employee. Through the end of the year, we had 361 employees that had used some portion of that leave. Those were employees that were either sick, tested positive for the virus, had a family member or a child that did, or had an exposure that caused them to have to quarantine. 81 of those employees used the full 80 hours. The total hours that were used were 16,570. So the average was about 45.9 hours per person. As of January 1, that original 80 hours expired at the end of calendar year 2020. As of January 1, there was an additional 80 hours that was extended. And so we'll continue tracking that for city employees. Again, this is a little bit of a recap from what we talked about a few weeks ago. We've been tracking the expenditures that we feel will be eligible for potential reimbursement if there is further federal money that comes our way or state money that comes our way. So to date, we have tracked about $12.5 million. The majority of that's going to be public safety salaries, Emergency Family Medical Leave Act, and extended child care leave pay for employees. Protective gear is a big part of that. Medical supplies, cleaning supplies, and technology that we needed to have these virtual meetings and things like that. So of that $12.5 million, we've requested reimbursement, received reimbursement of about $1.3 million from the 4 counties that we're in. We have detailed that to you all in the past. We've got some reimbursements through FEMA, but not many. And then in December, we made an additional request to Guilford County for additional funding. We know that they have a balance of funds that they have yet to allocate. And so we just made it known that we would like to see that as if it's possible.
Is that 30 outside of the 16,472 we received?
Yes. Yes, it is. What I didn't include here were some funds that we received through the transit agency that were separate, but they were earmarked strictly for transit. The other thing that I wanted to mention, we've been hearing from the feds that there will be an additional, you've heard in the media, $1.9 trillion proposal. We've been in contact. It seems like every day we get an email from the Ferguson Group detailing what that may include. And so I guess my time's up, sorry. So we'll continue to monitor that. We will ask for anything that we feel like we can get reimbursed. We'll certainly be on top of that. I think that's all I had. Be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Before we go into closed session, Councilman Johnson, are you with us? Okay. How about Councilwoman Peters? Are you with us?
And Mayor, this is Councilman Johnson. I am here.
You are here. Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
I'm just double checking.
I'm here.
Okay. And Monica, you're with us too. Okay. All right. So we now have all 9 council members present. We're next on the agenda is a closed session. It's listed as attorney-client privileges. Actually, probably more personnel really than. Oh, it is one. Okay. Well, we'll say it's for attorney-client privilege and personnel. Then I need a motion to go into closed session.
Motion to go into closed session.
Okay, that's the motion was made by Councilmember Hudson. Who was the second on that? Councilman Chris Williams was the second. Any discussion on the motion to go into closed session? Okay, hearing none. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Johnson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Peters?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore? Aye. Councilman Williams?
Aye.
Councilman Hudson?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Jefferson?
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye. So that motion to go into closed session is approved by a vote of 9-0. And we'll pause while we get into closed session.
experienced something like this before, combing through online chat rooms
Can y'all hear me?
I can, Monica.
Okay, great.
Okay, this is the High Point City Council, Mayor Jay Wagner. We're now back in open session for our special meeting today. Councilman Holmes has joined us here in person at City Hall. Councilman Johnson, are you still with us? Councilwoman Peters, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Councilman Jefferson, are you with us?
I just texted him, told him to go back to Zoom, so.
Okay.
We'll give him a minute.
All right.
He'll probably announce himself when he gets on.
Okay, we're going to give them just a little bit more time to rejoin the meeting. We're going to take action on one item, and then we will adjourn this meeting and then probably turn right back around and start our 5:30 meeting after a short break. Okay, Councilman Johnson, are you with us?
Yes, Mayor, I'm here.
Councilman Jefferson?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay, so I think we have all 9 councilmen present now. I'm going to make a motion to approve a payment to Randy McCaslin in the sum of $17,631.11. This is compensation for lost vacation time. It's being done in accordance with past practices. The impetus for this is that, Randy, as acting as our interim manager since the resignation of Manager Demko, has really had to put in a lot of extra time, and we're very thankful for his service and thankful that he didn't take as much vacation as he was entitled to, especially over the holidays and at various other times when we really needed him to be here. So I would like to make a motion that we approve that, because this is vacation time that he would have lost had by, I think, this week in accordance with some other city policies. So this is something that we have done in the past. And I'm happy to make that motion today. Is there a second? Second. I believe I'm going to give that one to the Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Moore. And is there any discussion on this item prior to voting? Okay, hearing none. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Johnson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore? Aye. Councilman Williams?
Aye.
Councilman Hudson?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Jefferson? Councilman Jefferson, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye. So that item is approved by a vote of 9-0. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, motion's been made by Councilman Williams, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Moore. Is there anyone opposed to adjourning the meeting? Okay, hearing none, the special meeting is now adjourned, and we will, we're going to take about a 5-minute break, and we'll come back around and start our regular meeting.